where coins are not just money, but living history. And today we open the door to one of the most important modern chapters in American coinage, the 2022 quarter dollar a coin that quietly marked a turning point in the story of the United States Mint, because 2022 was not just another year. It was the beginning of the American Women Quarters program, a bold new era that changed how the nation tells its story through metal and design. And as you hold a 2022 quarter in your hand, you are holding the first breath of that era, the moment when history, culture, art, and identity all came together on a coin that millions used without realizing its power. The obverse still carries George Washington, but not the familiar portrait people had seen since 1932. Instead, the mint reached back into history and selected a design originally created by Laura Garden Fraser in the early 20th century, a design once passed over but finally honored nearly a century later, making the 2022 quarter a story of long-delayed recognition and artistic justice. And this alone makes the coin a bridge between generations, because it connects the earliest days of the Washington quarter with the modern voice of America. But the true revolution of the 2022 quarter lives on the reverse, where for the first time in U.S. history, a circulating coin program focused entirely on real women who shaped the nation, and their stories are not myths, not symbols, but human lives full of struggle, courage, vision, and impact. The year began with Maya Angelou, whose image captures movement, freedom, and voice, a poet, author, and civil rights activist whose words helped a nation confront its soul, and her presence on the quarter makes this coin a monument to language, truth, and resilience. Then came Eleanor Roosevelt, a former First Lady who transformed the role into one of activism and moral leadership, a champion of human rights who helped shape the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and whose portrait on the quarter reminds us that leadership does not end when power fades. It evolves. The story continues with Wilma Mankiller, the first woman elected principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, whose quarter honors Native sovereignty, community strength, and self-determination, showing that American history is not one story, but many voices rising together. And then Adelina Otero Warren appears, a suffragist educator and political activist whose work for voting rights and education in New Mexico helped expand democracy itself, making her quarter a quiet but powerful symbol of the fight for representation and equality. And finally, Anna May Wong, the first Chinese-American movie star in Hollywood whose career challenged stereotypes and opened doors in an industry that often tried to close them. Her quarter celebrates culture, representation, and perseverance in the face of exclusion. And together, these 5 coins released throughout 2022 transformed the quarter dollar from a simple workhorse of commerce into a traveling museum of American history carried in pockets across the country. And this is what makes the 2022 quarter so special. It is not about rarity or silver content. It is about meaning, impact, and the way a nation chooses to remember itself. These coins were struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, including proof and silver-proof editions for collectors, adding layers of collectability, while the circulation strikes tell a different story, one of reach and influence. Because unlike metals locked in cases, these quarters moved through everyday life, from gas stations to grocery stores, spreading history with every transaction. And when you consider future collectors, the significance deepens, because first-year issues always matter, and 2022 will forever stand as the foundation year of the American Women Quarters program, making these coins historical anchors in modern numismatics. And as time moves forward, worn examples will tell stories of use, while pristine examples will preserve the sharp lines of a moment when the Mint chose to expand the narrative and recognize voices long overlooked. And this is why a full 2-hour video can be built around the 2022 quarter dollar, because it is not just about 5 designs or mintages. It is about art, politics, social change, and national identity, all captured on a coin worth 25 cents, yet priceless in symbolism. And as we dive deeper into each design, each life, and Each decision behind the scenes, you begin to see that the 2022 quarter is a statement, a declaration, that American history is broad, diverse, and still unfolding, and every time one of these coins passes through your hands, it invites you to stop, look closer, and listen. Because history is speaking softly from the smallest canvas, and this is only the beginning of the story of the 2022 quarter dollar a coin that future generations will look back on and say, this is where a new chapter truly began. As we continue deeper into the story of the 2022 quarter dollar, we must slow down and understand how much planning, debate, and historical weight stood behind this single year. Because programs like this are never accidental, they are responses to culture, to criticism, and to the growing realization that coins are among the most democratic forms of storytelling ever created. Every citizen touches them, rich or poor, young or old. And for decades, American coinage spoke with a narrow voice, focusing on presidents' buildings and abstract symbols. But by the early 21st century, pressure grew to tell a fuller story, and the 2022 quarter became the answer to that call. And when the United States Mint announced the American Women Quarters program, it was clear that this would not be a short experiment, but a multi-year commitment. And 2022 would carry the responsibility of setting the tone, the expectations, and the legacy. And this made every design choice, every line, every expression on those coins critically important, because first impressions in history last forever, and the Mint understood that the first 5 women chosen would define how the public viewed the entire program. And this is why the selection itself deserves long examination, because these women were not chosen for fame alone, but for impact across literature, civil rights, politics, indigenous leadership, voting rights, and film, each representing a different doorway into the American experience. And this diversity was intentional. It was a statement that history cannot be told from a single angle, and when these quarters entered circulation, they entered a nation already debating identity, memory, and representation, making the coins part of a larger cultural conversation. And then there is the technical side of the 2022 quarter, which adds another layer to its importance. The return of Laura Garden Fraser's Washington portrait is more than a design update. It is a correction of history, because Fraser created that design in 1931, and many believed it to be superior to the one chosen at the time. Yet it was set aside and forgotten, and by reviving it in 2022, the Mint acknowledged an artist whose contribution had been delayed for nearly a century, making the obverse itself part of the theme of recognition and overdue honor. And when collectors study this portrait, they often note the strength in Washington's profile, the sharper lines, the sense of forward motion, which pairs symbolically with the program's goal of progress and forward thinking. And from a production standpoint, millions upon millions of these quarters were struck, yet quantity does not erase significance, because coins are time capsules and high mintage. Coins often become the most powerful historical witnesses because they survive everywhere in change jars, old wallets, and forgotten drawers. And decades from now, someone will find a worn 2022 quarter and trace it back to this moment in history when America chose to expand its narrative. And this is where collectors and historians intersect, because while some people chase rare errors, others chase meaning, and the 2022 quarter delivers meaning in abundance, and even error coins from this year. Whether die cracks off center strikes or double details will one day become fascinating artifacts tied to a pivotal launch year. And the proof issues struck in San Francisco add another chapter because they preserve the designs in their most pristine form, with mirrored fields and frosted devices, creating miniature works of art that reflect how seriously the Mint treated this program, and silver proofs add intrinsic value, but more importantly, they add longevity, ensuring these designs will survive generations in collections and museums. And as we continue to build a 2-hour narrative, we can explore public reaction, how educators used these coins in classrooms, how collectors debated artistic choices, how social media spread images of the new quarters within hours of release, turning pocket change into viral history, and how for the first time many people actually looked at a quarter instead of spending it without thought. And this shift in attention is rare and powerful because it proves that even in a digital age, physical objects still matter, and coins still have the ability to stop time for a moment and invite reflection. And when we zoom out even further, the 2022 quarter becomes part of a long tradition stretching back to the earliest American coins, which were designed to express national values, freedom, unity, strength, and trust. And in 2022, those values were expressed through people rather than symbols, through faces rather than buildings. And this evolution tells us something critical about where the nation stands and where it hopes to go. And as this story continues episode by episode, design by design woman, by woman, the 2022 quarter dollar transforms from everyday change into a powerful historical document. And this is why we keep digging deeper, because every layer reveals another reason why this coin matters, and why the story of the 2022 quarter dollar is far from finished. Imagine holding a single quarter dollar in your hand and realizing it carries the story of land, freedom, struggle, hope, and the promise of a new life. This is not just spare change. This is the 2015 Homestead National Monument of America. Quarter, a coin that opens the door to one of the most powerful chapters in United States history. And today on this channel, we are going to uncover the deep, dramatic, and emotional story behind this coin, a story so rich that it can easily carry a 2-hour journey into the past, because this quarter represents the Homestead Act of 1862, a law that changed the destiny of millions of families and shaped the nation itself. The Homestead Quarter was released in 2015 as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, and it honors Homestead National Monument of America located in Nebraska, the very place where the first successful homestead claim was filed and approved. This land became a symbol of opportunity, courage, and sacrifice as settlers, farmers, immigrants, former slaves, and dreamers from all over the world looked westward, believing that hard work and determination could earn them land and a future. The design on the reverse of the coin is deeply symbolic, showing a simple frontier cabin with a water pump and a newly planted tree representing life growth and stability. This image captures the raw reality of homesteading, where families arrived with almost nothing and built homes with their own hands, facing harsh weather, isolation, hunger, and uncertainty. Yet still believing in the promise of ownership and independence, the artist's intent was to show not wealth or luxury, but survival and hope, because the Homestead Act allowed citizens and intended citizens to claim up to 160 acres of public land if they lived on it, improved it, and farmed it for 5 years. This act opened the door for westward expansion, but it also came with consequences for Native American tribes whose lands were taken and whose lives were disrupted forever, making the story of the Homestead Quarter complex, powerful, and deeply human. The obverse of the coin features George Washington, just like all America the Beautiful Quarters, but the real voice of this coin speaks through the reverse design and the history behind it. Minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the 2015 Homestead Quarter entered circulation during a time when modern America was reflecting on its past and the meaning of opportunity. Freedom and land ownership collectors quickly recognized this coin as more than a design. It is a teaching tool, a reminder of how laws, decisions, and dreams shape a nation. This quarter connects the struggles of 19th century settlers to modern discussions about land rights, migration, and the American dream. Homestead National Monument itself preserves the land where Daniel Freeman filed the first successful homestead claim on January 1, 1863, making this site the physical beginning of the homestead story. And the quarter immortalizes that moment in metal. Every time this coin passes through your hands, it carries the echo of wagon wheels, the sound of axes chopping wood, the silence of open plains, and the determination of families who believed that the land could give them a future. This is why the 2015 Homestead Quarter matters. It is not rare because of low mintage, and it is not valuable because of silver content, but it is priceless because of the story it tells. And on this channel, we do not just talk about coins, We uncover the stories hidden inside them, stories of courage, sacrifice, conflict, and hope. So stay with us, because this $quarter is not just a coin. It is the American frontier captured in 25 cents. And by the end of this video, you will never look at your pocket change the same way again. We go deeper into the story of the 2015 Homestead Quarter. We begin to understand that this coin is a doorway into everyday life, on the frontier life, that demanded strength, patience, and belief beyond comfort. Imagine families arriving on open land with nothing but basic tools, hope in their hearts, and the determination to survive storms, drought, loneliness, and endless labor. The Homestead Act promised land, but it did not promise ease. Settlers had to break tough prairie soil, build shelters from sod or rough timber, and protect crops from insects, disease, and unpredictable weather. Many failed and walked away, leaving behind dreams buried in the soil, while others stayed and slowly turned empty plains into farms, towns, and communities. This quarter honors every one of those lives, both the successes and the struggles, because history is not clean or perfect. It is real and demanding. The cabin shown on the coin is small and simple, but it represents ownership, dignity, and freedom, something many had never known before. For immigrants escaping poverty in Europe, and for formerly enslaved people, seeking independence, land meant control over their future, and that idea still defines the American dream. Today, the Homestead Quarter also reminds us of the environmental transformation that followed as millions of acres were cultivated. Railroads expanded. Towns grew and America's economy shifted forever. But this growth came at a cost. Native American tribes were forced from their ancestral lands, treaties were broken, and cultures were disrupted. And this coin quietly carries that truth as well, because honest history must include every voice the America the Beautiful program chose. Homestead National Monument, not to celebrate conquest, but to recognize a turning point that shaped laws, society, and identity. The tree planted beside the cabin on the coin is young, symbolizing beginnings, but also responsibility, because land once claimed had to be cared for, protected, and passed on. Many homesteads failed within the 5-year requirement, showing how difficult true ownership really was. Yet the belief in opportunity kept drawing people westward, generation after generation. When you hold this quarter, you are holding a symbol of law, turning into action, policy, turning into lives and land, turning into legacy. Collectors value this coin. For its meaning, educators use it to teach history, and everyday people carry it without realizing its weight. This is why a 2-hour video is not excessive for this quarter, because every detail opens another chapter. The politics behind the Homestead Act, the stories of women who ran farms alone, the role of the railroad companies, the impact on agriculture, and the way this single law distributed more than 270 million acres of land, shaping modern America. The 2015 Homestead Quarter stands as a quiet, powerful reminder that coins are more than metal. They are witnesses, and this channel exists to give those witnesses a voice. So as this story continues, remember that history is not locked in museums. It lives in your pocket, waiting to be discovered. Single $quarter, but opens the door to one of the most dramatic crossroads in American history. The 2016 Harper's Ferry Quarter is not just spare change. It is a time machine, a symbol, a battlefield, a promise, and a warning, all struck into metal. This coin carries the weight of rivers, meeting mountains rising, and a nation struggling to define freedom long before the modern world existed. Harper's Ferry stands at the meeting point of the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers, a place where geography itself demanded destiny. Native American paths crossed here, colonial traders passed through here, factories rose here, and revolution followed. This narrow stretch of land became the key to transportation industry and military power, making it one of the most fought over and argued about locations in early America. When the young United States sought to arm itself, it turned to Harper's Ferry, establishing a Federal armory that would shape American manufacturing with interchangeable parts, an innovation that would change the world. Yet the same armory became the stage for one of the most explosive moments before the Civil War when abolitionist John Brown launched his raid, believing he could ignite the end of slavery. His actions shocked the nation, split opinions, and pushed America closer to war. The echoes of that moment still ring through history, and they live inside this quarter. The Eye, 2016. Harper's Ferry Quarter, released as part of the America. The beautiful program captures the essence of this place through the image of John Brown's fort standing solid and defiant against the rolling hills behind it, a small stone building that witnessed fear, courage, failure, and the unstoppable movement of ideas. This design was chosen not for beauty alone, but for meaning. The fort represents resistance, the hills represent time, and the coin itself represents memory minted in Philadelphia and Denver. This quarter traveled into millions of hands carrying a story most people never stop to hear. Yet collectors, historians, and sharp-eyed coin hunters know that condition mint marks, errors, and varieties can transform this everyday coin into a treasured artifact. The Harper's Ferry Quarter connects modern America to the Industrial Revolution, to the fight against slavery, to the evolution of the United States Mint, and to the idea that money is more than value. It is narrative. It is power. It is identity. Every ridge on Washington's profile, every detail in the fort, every word on the reverse was carefully chosen to preserve history in a form that fits your pocket. This is the kind of coin that rewards attention. The more you look, the more it speaks about craftsmanship, about politics, about how a nation chooses to remember its past, and how future generations will discover it through objects like this. Quarter. Today, we will unfold the full story from ancient river crossings to colonial ambition, from armory innovation to John Brown's raid from the America the Beautiful program, to modern collecting values revealing why the 2016 Harper's Ferry Quarter deserves a place not just in albums, but in conversation. This is not just a coin history lesson. It is a deep dive into the soul of America told through copper and nickel. And by the end, you will never look at a $quarter the same way again. As the story continues, we step deeper into the landscape that shaped Harper's Ferry, because understanding this quarter means understanding why this place mattered so much. Long before it appeared on a coin, the rivers here created natural highways, allowing people, goods, and ideas to move through the mountains, making Harper's Ferry a gateway between the eastern cities and the western frontier. This geographic power attracted engineers, politicians, and soldiers, and when the federal government chose this site for an armory, it transformed a quiet town into a symbol of national strength. The machines inside the armory produced weapons with precision never seen before, helping standardize parts and laying foundations for modern mass production techniques that would later fuel American industry across the nation. Yet progress brought tension, enslaved labor, free labor, and industrial ambition collided, here turning Harper's Ferry into a pressure point in the debate over slavery. John Brown understood the symbolic power of this place when he chose it for his raid. He believed that by seizing weapons, he could empower enslaved people to rise against their oppressors. Instead, his raid failed militarily, but succeeded historically by terrifying slaveholding states, inspiring abolitionists, and forcing the nation to confront the violence embedded in the system of slavery when you hold the 2016 Harper's Ferry Quarter. You are holding a reminder that ideas can be more powerful than armies, and that even failure can change the course of history. The coin design reflects this gravity. John Brown's fort appears small yet unbreakable, a visual metaphor for how one structure, one idea, one moment can outweigh armies and governments. Collectors pay close attention to the sharpness of the fort, details, the clarity of the inscriptions, and the overall strike, because these elements determine how faithfully the story is preserved in metal. High-grade examples show crisp stone lines and strong contrast, while circulated coins tell a different story marked by years of commerce travel and human touch. Both versions matter because both represent how history moves from museums into everyday life. The America the Beautiful series aimed to reconnect Americans with their heritage through national parks and historic sites, and Harper's Ferry was a powerful choice because it represents conflict, growth, and transformation themes that define the American experience. As we explore this quarter further, we will examine mintages, collector demand errors that can increase value, and how this coin fits into broader trends in modern numismatics. But more importantly, we will keep returning to the human story because coins are witnesses. They pass silently through generations carrying memory without judgment. And the 2016 Harper's Ferry Quarter witnesses a nation struggling with freedom, innovation, and identity. A struggle that did not end in the 19th century, but continues today, making this coin not just a collectible but a conversation piece, a teaching tool, and a reminder that history lives in the smallest objects. If you keep listening this quarter, we'll keep talking, and its story is far from over. Where every coin tells a story, and today you are holding history in your hand, as we dive deep into the unforgettable journey of the 2001 Kentucky $quarter a coin that is far more than 25 cents, because this single piece of American metal carries the soul of the bluegrass state, the pride of early frontier life, and the heartbeat of a nation built on courage, tradition, and identity. And as this story unfolds, you will discover how Kentucky became the 15th state, how its rolling hills, rich limestone soil, and untamed frontier shaped generations of Americans, and why the United States Mint chose this exact moment in the legendary 50-state quarters program to honor a land known for horse racing, bourbon, craftsmanship, hard work, and quiet strength. Released in the fall of 2001, this quarter arrived during a time of national reflection and unity, making its message even more powerful as the obverse continues, the timeless portrait of George Washington symbolizing stability and leadership, while the reverse transports us straight to Federal Hill, the iconic mansion in Bardstown, believed to inspire the song My Old Kentucky Home, a melody that echoes across Churchill Downs every Derby Day and represents memory, belonging, and home. The image framed by stately trees captures elegance and simplicity, reminding collectors that Kentucky history is rooted not in royalty, but in perseverance, long before statehood Native American tribes thrived on this land. Then came explorers like Daniel Boone, who carved paths through the Cumberland Gap, opening the gateway to the west. Settlers followed building farms, towns, and traditions grounded in the land itself. Kentucky stood at the crossroads during the Civil War, divided yet resilient, and after the war it rose through agriculture, horse breeding, and distilling. World-famous bourbon, thanks to its pure limestone filtered water, the quarter quietly honors all of this, from the fields of bluegrass to the thunder of hooves on the racetrack. Millions were minted in Philadelphia and Denver, making it accessible yet historically rich, while proof versions from San Francisco offer collectors a polished mirror of the same powerful story. Every detail on this coin was carefully chosen to reflect heritage, pride, and identity, and as you look closer, you realize this is not just a state quarter. It is a tribute to American expansion culture, music, and endurance, a coin that traveled through millions of hands, yet still whispers stories of frontier cabins, candlelit halls, and songs passed down through generations. And by the end of this journey, you will never look at the 2001 Kentucky quarter the same way again, because this coin is not just money, it is memory metal and meaning forged into one timeless piece of American history. As we continue deeper into the story of the 2001 Kentucky $quarter, the layers of meaning only grow richer because this coin was born from the ambitious 50-state quarters program, one of the most successful numismatic projects in American history, designed to reconnect everyday citizens with their state heritage and inspire a new generation of collectors, and Kentucky chosen as the 15th state to be honored. followed the exact order of ratification, reminding us that Kentucky joined the Union in 1792 during a time when America itself was still defining what freedom and nationhood meant. The timing of this release in 2001 placed the coin into circulation during a pivotal era when Americans were searching for unity roots and shared identity, and unknowingly, this quarter became a small symbol of comfort and continuity. The design process itself involved artists, historians, and state officials working together to capture Kentucky in a single powerful image, and the choice of Federal Hill was no accident, because the mansion stands as a reminder of early American architecture, community gatherings, and the cultural importance of music and storytelling. My Old Kentucky Home is more than a song. It is a living tradition sung by tens of thousands before. The Kentucky Derby binding past and present into one emotional moment, and that same emotion is frozen into the metal of this coin. The trees surrounding the mansion represent longevity, growth, and the natural beauty of the bluegrass region, while the clean, balanced layout reflects the dignity and calm strength associated with Kentucky people beyond the imagery. The coin also represents the economic backbone of the state: tobacco farming, horse breeding, and bourbon. Distillation industries that shaped local and national markets. Limestone-rich soil gave Kentucky the clean water needed for world-class whiskey, while vast pastures created the finest thoroughbred horses on earth, making Kentucky a global name without ever losing its humble character. The 2001 Kentucky Quarter passed through gas stations, diners, racetracks, and family hands, quietly witnessing everyday life while carrying centuries of history within its edges. Collectors today may find common circulated examples easily, but condition rarity, mint state quality, and proof finishes elevate this coin into a cherished artifact, especially when preserved with sharp details and original luster. And as time moves forward, this quarter becomes more than a modern issue. It becomes a time capsule from the early 21st century, a reminder of how America chose to honor its states, its stories, and its people through art, history, and currency. And when you hold the 2001 Kentucky Quarter, you are not just holding a piece of the 50-state series, you are holding frontier, courage, Southern resilience, cultural pride, and American unity pressed into metal, a coin that proves even the smallest denomination can carry the weight of a nation's story. And this is why the 2001 Kentucky Quarter Dollar will forever remain a quiet yet powerful legend in American numismatic history, where coins quarter dollar turns everyday pocket change into a doorway through time. And today, you are about to experience one of the most breathtaking stories ever struck into metal: the 2014 Arches National Park Quarter. A coin that does far more than represent 25 cents. It captures millions of years of Earth's history, the spirit of the American West, the ambition of a nation, and the quiet power of nature frozen forever in copper and nickel. Imagine holding this coin in your hand and realizing you are touching a miniature monument, a landscape carved by wind, water, and time long before the first human footprint reached the desert. This is not just a quarter. This is a story of Firestone erosion, exploration, survival, and national identity. And by the end of this journey, you will never look at a modern quarter the same way. Again, the 2014 Arches Quarter was released as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a historic series launched by the United States Mint to honor the most important natural and cultural sites across the nation. This program itself was born from a desire to reconnect Americans with their land, their heritage, and their shared history by placing it directly into their hands through circulating coinage. And when Arches National Park was chosen, it was not by accident. Arches represents one of the most visually dramatic and scientifically fascinating landscapes in the United States, located in eastern Utah near the town of Moab. Arches National Park is home to over 2,000 natural stone arches, more than anywhere else on Earth. These arches are not man-made, They are not decorative, they are the result of a slow, relentless geological process that began hundreds of millions of years ago when this region was covered by an ancient sea. Layers of salt sandstone and sediment were deposited, compressed, and fractured over time as the salt shifted beneath the surface. The rock above cracked, creating fins and walls wind rain. Ice and gravity then went to work, carving away the weaker stone, leaving behind the elegant arches we see today. Delicate Arch, the most famous of them all. Now immortalized on the 2014 quarter, stands as a symbol not only of the park, but of the state of Utah itself. Delicate Arch is instantly recognizable, its freestanding curve balanced against the sky almost, defying gravity. And that is exactly why it was chosen as the central design element on the reverse of the coin. The artists and engravers at the United States Mint faced a tremendous challenge. How do you capture the scale, beauty, and emotion of a towering sandstone arch on a surface smaller than a few inches, yet, through careful design, sharp relief, and thoughtful composition, they succeeded the reverse of the 2014 Arch's quarter features. Delicate Arch in the foreground with the La Salle Mountains rising in the distance, a reminder that Arches National Park is not just a single formation, but part of a vast interconnected landscape. The inscription Arches sits proudly above the design, while Utah and 2014 anchor the coin in both place and time. The words E pluribus unum reinforce the idea that from many landscapes, many histories, and many people, one nation is formed on the obverse, Washington. A design refreshed in 2010 to bring greater detail and strength to the first president's image. Washington faces forward, connecting the nation's founding to its natural heritage. The juxtaposition is powerful. The leader who helped shape the republic on one side, and the ancient land that predates that republic by millions of years on the other. This contrast is at the heart of the America. The beautiful series and the Arches quarter exemplifies it perfectly. The coin was struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints for circulation, with proof versions produced at the San Francisco Mint. Mintages reached into the hundreds of millions, making this coin widely available, yet its artistic and educational value far outweighs its face value. Collectors quickly took notice not because it was rare, but because it was meaningful for many people. This quarter became a first introduction to Arches National Park, inspiring travel curiosity and appreciation for conservation. Arches itself has a deep human history. Long before it became a national park, indigenous peoples, including the ancestral Puebloans, lived in and traveled through this region, leaving behind rock art tools and traces of their lives. Later, Spanish explorers passed through, followed by American settlers, ranchers, and prospectors. The harsh desert environment tested everyone who came. But the land endured. In 1929, President Herbert Hoover proclaimed Arches a national. The land endured in 1929. President Herbert Hoover proclaimed Arches a national monument, recognizing its unique geological features, and in 1971, it was elevated to national park status by Congress, ensuring greater protection and preservation, the inclusion of Arches in the America. The Beautiful Quarters program serves as a reminder that national parks are not just scenic backdrops. They are living classrooms, scientific laboratories, and sacred spaces. Where nature tells its story on its own terms, the 2014 Arches Quarter quietly carries this message into millions of homes, wallets, and collections. It bridges geology and numismatics, art and science, commerce and conservation. From a collector's perspective, the Arches Quarter offers many avenues of interest, condition, rarity, errors, and proofs. Uncirculated examples with sharp detail and full luster are sought after, while proof versions with deep mirrored fields and frosted devices showcase the design at its finest. Some collectors search for errors such as off-center strikes, die cracks, or doubling, which can add uniqueness and value beyond the standard issue. Others focus on building complete America, the beautiful sets with the Arches Quarter holding a place of honor due to its iconic imagery. Beyond collecting, this coin represents something larger. It symbolizes the role of coinage as a storyteller throughout history. Coins have been used to commemorate victories, leaders, gods, and ideals. The 2014 Arches Quarter continues that tradition by honoring nature itself, acknowledging that the land shapes the nation just as much as the people do. When you hold this quarter, you hold a snapshot of deep time, a reminder that long before modern borders and currencies, the earth was already crafting masterpieces stone by stone, arch by arch, and now that masterpiece travels the world in pockets, purses, and collections, spreading awareness and wonder. This is why the 2014 Arches National Park Quarter matters. It is not just a modern issue. It is a bridge between ancient geology and modern society, a small disk with a massive story. And this is only the beginning, because every detail, every ridge, every line of metal has more to say. And as we continue this journey deeper into the history, symbolism, minting process, and collector significance of this coin, you will see how a simple quarter becomes a 2-hour story of America itself. So stay with me, keep watching, and let this coin show you just how powerful pocket change can be. Quarter dollar, where every small piece of metal carries a giant story. And today, we are opening the door to one of the most visually powerful and historically rich coins ever released by the United States Mint. The 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter, a coin that does not just represent money but captures a living landscape shaped by wind, time, culture, and American identity. This quarter belongs to the America the Beautiful series, a program designed to freeze the soul of the nation into metal. And when the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve was chosen, it was not by accident, because this place tells a story that stretches from ancient native tribes to modern conservation, from silent shifting sands to towering mountains standing guard in the background. The Great Sand Dunes Quarter is a reminder that America is not only cities and power, but also raw nature, untouched and endlessly moving. Imagine holding this coin in your hand and realizing that the design represents the tallest sand dunes in North America, rising dramatically against the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a place where sand has traveled for thousands of years, carried by wind, trapped by geography, and transformed into something almost unreal. This quarter captures that moment where earth and sky meet, where motion and stillness exist together. And that is why collectors and historians see it as more than just another quarter. The obverse features George Washington as redesigned in this series, bringing a classic face into a modern era, while the reverse design created by artist Glenna Goodacre shows the sweeping dunes with mountains behind them, symbolizing balance between movement and permanence. The year 2014 marks a moment in American coinage where storytelling became just as important as value. This coin was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, including proof versions and silver proofs, making it accessible to everyday people while still offering depth for serious collectors. The Great Sand Dunes Quarter also opens the door to conversations about geology, climate migration, and preservation, because these dunes are alive. They move, they grow, they shrink, and they respond to changes in wind and water, just like history itself. For a 2-hour video, this coin allows you to explore Native American presence in the region. Early explorers, settlers, the creation of the national monument, and its later designation as a national park and preserve. You can dive into how the Mint selects park designs, how artists translate landscapes into metal, and how collectors search for errors, high-grade examples, and silver versions. You can talk about why this coin matters today in a world where nature is constantly under pressure, and how a simple quarter can inspire curiosity, respect, and awareness. This is not just pocket change. This is a miniature monument, a traveling museum piece, and a symbol of how America chooses to remember itself. So stay with us as we go deep into the story, the design, the history, the minting process, the collector value, and the hidden meaning behind the 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter, because by the end of this journey, you will never look at a quarter dollar the same way again. As we continue deeper into the story of the 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter, we move beyond the surface and begin to understand why this specific landscape earned its place in American coin history. The Great Sand Dunes are not just piles of sand, they are the result of a rare and powerful natural system where wind, water, mountains, and time work together in perfect balance for thousands of years, streams flowing down from the surrounding. Mountains and time work together in perfect balance for thousands of years. Streams flowing down from the surrounding mountains carried sand into the valley. Seasonal winds pushed that sand toward the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, where it became trapped and slowly built upward generation after generation, creating dunes that rise higher than any others on the continent. And when the United States Mint decided to capture this place on a quarter, the challenge was enormous, because how do you freeze movement into metal? How do you show something that is never still? The artist answered this by creating flowing lines and sweeping shapes that give the illusion of motion. Even though the coin itself is solid and unchanging, this is why collectors admire the design, because it feels alive in the hand. This coin also represents a turning point in how Americans think about preservation. The Great Sand Dunes area was first protected in the early 20th century, at a time when many natural wonders were being destroyed for development and resources. Local citizens, scientists, and explorers recognized that this place was unique, not just for its beauty, but for its scientific importance and cultural history. Native tribes had lived near these dunes for centuries, using the land with respect and understanding, leaving behind stories, tools, and traditions that are still studied today. When the area was finally designated as a national park, and preserve it became a symbol of long-term thinking, protecting not just scenery, but ecosystems, wildlife, and future knowledge. And that message is quietly carried by this quarter every time it changes hands. For collectors, the 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter offers many layers of interest. Standard circulation strikes from Philadelphia and Denver are common yet high-grade examples, with sharp details and clean surfaces become more desirable, especially those preserved straight from original rolls. The San Francisco Mint produced proof versions with mirror-like fields and frosted designs, as well as silver proofs containing precious metal, which adds intrinsic value beyond face value. Error collectors also search for doubled dies off-center strikes and other minting mistakes that can turn an ordinary quarter into a prized find. This makes the coin exciting because anyone could potentially discover something special in everyday change. A 2-hour video on this quarter can also explore how the America the Beautiful series changed public engagement with coins for the first time in decades. People began actively checking their change again, learning about parks, monuments, and history simply by spending money. Children learned geography, adults rediscovered national parks, and collectors found new motivation. The Great Sand Dunes Quarter stands out in this series because of its dramatic contrast. Soft flowing dunes against sharp, rugged mountains, symbolizing the dual nature of America itself. Gentle yet powerful, always changing yet rooted in history. As the story unfolds, we can examine how modern coinage reflects national identity, how decisions made in Washington shape what stories are told and remembered, and how something as small as a $quarter can act as a bridge between past, present, and future. The 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter is not loud. It does not shout wealth or power. Instead, it whispers patience, movement, resilience, and balance. And that quiet message is exactly why it deserves a deep, detailed exploration. So stay with us as we continue this journey through history, art, nature, and numismatics, because this single coin opens a path to understanding far more than its face value ever suggests, where every small piece of metal carries a giant American story. And today you are holding time in your hands with the 2020 National Park Quarter, a coin that marks the powerful finale of a historic journey through the lands, ideas, and spirit of the United States. This is not just a quarter. This is the closing chapter of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a 10-year mission by the United States Mint to honor the most meaningful national parks. and protected places across the nation, and in 2020, that journey reached its emotional and historic peak. These coins were released at a moment when the world slowed down and history pressed pause, yet the mint continued to tell America's story through art, metal, and memory. Each 2020 National Park quarter captures a different landscape, a different chapter, a different heartbeat of the nation, from wide-open grasslands that whisper stories of native tribes and pioneer dreams to tropical coastlines where ocean winds carry centuries of cultural survival. These designs were chosen not for decoration, but for meaning. They reflect conservation resilience and the idea that America's true wealth lives in its land and people. The artists and engravers poured generations of symbolism into every line, every shadow, every animal, every horizon, making these quarters miniature history books that fit in your pocket. And for collectors, this year is especially powerful because it represents the final year of an era no more. America, the beautiful quarters would ever be made after 2020, making these coins instant historical markers struck in both Philadelphia and Denver mints, and also in special proof finishes for collectors who understand that the end of a series often becomes the beginning of long-term value, but beyond mint marks and finishes. There is a deeper story. This program began in a time of optimism and expansion and ended during uncertainty and reflection, making the 2020 National Park quarters a mirror of America itself. Strong, challenged, diverse, and enduring. When you study these coins closely, you see more than scenery. You see the government's commitment to preservation. You see respect for indigenous history. You see the balance between nature and progress. And you see why coin collecting is not about money alone, it is about memory, legacy, and identity. This is why a simple quarter from 2020 can carry the weight of centuries, and why collectors, historians, and everyday Americans continue to search their change, hoping to find one, because holding it feels like holding a piece of the American journey. And in this video, we are going to dive deep into that journey, exploring the stories behind the parks, the meaning behind the parks, the meaning behind the designs, the historical context of the program, and why the 2020 National Park Quarter stands as one of the most important modern coins ever released. So stay with Coins Quarter Dollar, because once you understand this coin, you will never look at pocket change the same way again. Now let us slow down and step deeper into the heart of the 2020 National Park quarters, because every single design from this year was chosen to speak when words could not, and each coin represents a final salute to America's natural legacy. The year 2020 featured 5 powerful sites, and each one was selected to close the program with meaning, strength, and diversity. These were not random parks. They were symbols, places where history, nature, and humans struggle. Meet the first release reminds us that America's story did not begin with modern cities, but with ancient cultures and sacred land. These designs highlight wildlife not as decoration, but as guardians of the ecosystem, animals shown in motion, strength, and survival. Because the United States Mint wanted to remind the world that preservation is an active responsibility, not a passive memory. The engravers studied photographs, field reports, and historical records to ensure authenticity down to the smallest detail, because a national park quarter must do more than look beautiful. It must tell the truth in metal. And when you turn the coin in your hand, the weight feels the same as any other quarter, but the meaning is heavier. This was the last chance for the Mint to speak through this program, and they used it wisely. The scenes show balance between skyland and life, carefully arranged to guide the eye and the mind, and collectors noticed immediately. Many said these final designs felt more emotional, more thoughtful, almost like a goodbye letter written in steel and copper. And during a year when many Americans were confined indoors, these coins quietly traveled through the nation, reminding people of wide-open spaces, freedom, and endurance. And that contrast alone makes the 2020 National Park quarters historically unique. Future generations will look back and see these coins as artifacts of a turning point. Not just the end of a series, but the end of a chapter in American daily life. And for collectors, this is where the hunt becomes serious. Mint state examples, proof versions, low mintage rolls, and error coins suddenly carry extra weight, because end-year coins traditionally gain stronger demand. And this program was already beloved by schools, families, and new collectors across the country, which means millions of people formed emotional connections to these quarters. Emotional connection is what drives long-term collectability. And when emotion meets history, value often follows. But even if value never rises, these coins already succeeded. They educated, inspired, and preserved stories that could have been forgotten. And as we continue this video, we will break down each 2020 park design one by one, exploring the history of the land, the symbolism chosen by the artists, the hidden details most people miss, and how these coins fit into the larger story of American coinage. So stay locked in, because what started as spare change ends as a legacy. And by the end of this journey, you will understand why the 2020 National Park Quarter is not the end of a story, but the moment it became timeless. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a coin that marks the end of a 10-year American journey. A coin that quietly says, "This was the last time the United States told its national park story through everyday money." That is the power of the 2020 National Park Quarter. This is not just another release. This is the final heartbeat of the America the Beautiful series. The moment when art history, nature, and national identity all met on a single piece of metal. And once you realize that every 2020 quarter is a farewell message, you start to feel the weight of it differently. These coins were born in a year that tested the nation when parks stood empty. Roads were silent, and yet these quarters kept moving from hand to hand, carrying images of freedom, open land, and survival. And that contrast alone turns them into time capsules. Each design was crafted with intention. Every animal pose, every mountain line, every horizon was selected to represent endurance and continuity, because the Mint knew this series would never return. And endings matter in history. Endings define how stories are remembered. And that is why collectors pay attention to final year coins, why museums archive them, and why future generations will study them, not as spare change, but as cultural markers. This is the moment where a simple quarter becomes a witness to an era. And in this video, we are not just talking about coins. We are uncovering why the last chapter often becomes the most powerful chapter, why the 2020 National Park Quarter stands apart from every other modern coin, and why years from now people will look back and say, "This was the moment American coinage quietly said goodbye to a decade-long dream." So stay with Coins Quarter Dollar, because once you hear this story, you will never ignore a 2020 quarter again. Today you are about to travel into the deep, untold, and powerful story of the 2007 Utah quarter dollar coin, a coin that looks simple at first glance, but carries inside it centuries of faith, struggle, survival, and the unbreakable spirit of the American West. This is not just a quarter. This is a metal time capsule struck by the United States Mint as part of the historic 50-state quarters program, a program that changed coin collecting forever and pulled millions of Americans into the world of numismatics. The Utah quarter, released in 2007, represents the 45th state to join the Union, and its design is one of the most meaningful and symbolic in the entire series. At the center of the coin, you see the golden spike ceremony frozen in time, the exact moment on May 10, 1869, when the Transcontinental Railroad was completed at Promontory Summit, Utah. This single event connected the east and west coasts of the United States by rail for the first time and reshaped the nation economically, socially, and politically. Before this moment, a journey across the country could take months by wagon facing danger, disease, and death. After this moment, the nation was bound together by steel rails, allowing people, goods, ideas, and cultures to move faster than ever before. The Utah quarter does not just show trains, it shows destiny. It shows the driving of the final spike, a spike that symbolized unity, progress, and the triumph of human determination over vast deserts, towering mountains, And unimaginable hardship behind this image stands Utah history. A land shaped by native tribes long before European settlers, including the Ute Paiute Navajo and Shoshone peoples whose presence and culture laid the earliest foundation of the region. Then came the Mormon pioneers led by Brigham Young, arriving in 1847 seeking religious freedom, carving communities out of an unforgiving landscape, building irrigation systems, towns, and trade routes that would later support the growth of the railroad. The railroad itself was built through brutal conditions. Thousands of workers, including many Chinese immigrants, labored tirelessly facing extreme weather, dangerous explosions, and deadly accidents. Their sacrifices are silently honored every time this coin changes hands. The Utah quarter was minted in massive numbers at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with hundreds of millions produced. Meaning most examples you find today are common. Yet this is where the story deepens because condition rarity and errors separate ordinary pocket change from valuable collectibles. Uncirculated examples with sharp details, strong luster, and no wear can carry premium value, and certified high-grade coins graded MS67 and above are fiercely sought after by collectors. Error coins add another layer of excitement, including off-center strikes, doubled dies missing clad layers, and die cracks, which can turn a common quarter into a treasure worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The Utah quarter also holds emotional value for collectors because it represents the peak era of the state quarters program, a time when coin rolls were searched, families collected albums, and a new generation discovered history through spare change. The obverse features George Washington redesigned in 1999, honoring tradition, while modernizing the portrait, tying the past to the present, just as the railroad tied the nation together. And as you hold the 2007 Utah quarter in your hand, you are holding more than 25 cents. You are holding the echo of steam engines, the sound of hammers striking steel, the hopes of pioneers, the labor of immigrants, and the moment America became truly connected coast to coast. This coin is a reminder that history does not only live in books and museums, it lives in our pockets waiting to be discovered. And if you are a collector, a historian, or someone who loves hidden value, this quarter deserves a second look. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are hiding in plain sight, right in the change you almost spent without noticing. And that is why the 2007 Utah quarter dollar coin is not just a coin. It is a story worth telling, a story worth collecting, and a story worth remembering. As we continue deeper into the story of the 2007 Utah quarter dollar coin, we move beyond the surface design and into the powerful layers of meaning, history, production, and legacy that make this coin an essential chapter in American numismatics. The golden spike seen on the reverse was not chosen by accident. It was selected by the people of Utah themselves through a public design process, making this coin a voice of the state and its identity. The words, "Crossroads of the West," engraved on the coin reflect Utah's historic role as a meeting point of cultures, trade routes, migration paths, and technological progress. Long before railroads, native trails crossed this land. Then wagon routes followed, then stagecoach lines, and finally the iron rails that united a growing nation. Utah became the heartbeat of westward expansion, and the quarter captures that moment in a single powerful image. The Transcontinental Railroad transformed the United States economy overnight. It allowed farmers to ship crops across the country, manufacturers to move goods quickly, and families to travel to new opportunities. Utah shifted from a remote territory to a strategic center of commerce and communication. The completion of the railroad at Promontory Summit turned Utah into a symbol of national unity and innovation, and the quarter preserves this transformation forever in metal. Every detail on the coin tells a story, from the positioning of the locomotives to the raised hammers frozen in celebration. This design represents cooperation, competition, and achievement as two rival railroad companies, the Union Pacific and Central Pacific, finally met, ending years of intense labor and rivalry. From a minting perspective, the 2007 Utah quarter was struck in copper-nickel clad, composition weighing 5.67 grams with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters and a reeded edge. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins with a P Mint mark, while the Denver Mint struck coins with a D Mint mark. No proof Utah quarters were minted for circulation, but special proof versions were produced in both clad and 90% silver for collectors at the San Francisco Mint. These proof coins feature deep mirrored fields and frosted devices making the design appear almost alive under light silver proofs in perfect condition, carry strong collector demand, especially when preserved in original government packaging or graded by top certification services. Condition plays a critical role in value. Circulation wear quickly softens the high points of the design, especially on the locomotives and the lettering uncirculated examples. Maintain sharp edges, full luster, and clean fields. Coins graded Memis 65 and above are widely collected. But the real scarcity begins in the highest grades where population numbers drop dramatically. Errors are where excitement peaks off center strikes where part of the design is missing. Double die obverse errors, showing doubled lettering and dates and missing clad layer errors, exposing the copper core are among the most valuable Utah quarter varieties ever discovered. These errors are accidental but highly prized because they represent a moment when the minting process failed, creating a unique collectible that can never be repeated. The Utah quarter also holds cultural importance beyond value. It marks a time when millions of Americans reconnected with their history through everyday coins. Children filled state quarter maps. Parents searched bankrolls and collectors rediscovered the joy of the hunt. This program sparked one of the largest collecting movements in U.S. history, and the Utah quarter stands as one of its most iconic designs. Today, it is frequently studied in classrooms, used in history lessons, and featured in collections focused on westward expansion and industrial progress. As years pass, fewer high-grade examples remain, untouched. Many are lost to circulation, damaged, cleaned, or spent without a second thought making preserved. Examples increasingly desirable for long-term collectors, the Utah quarter represents not only a moment in history, but also a moment in modern collecting when coins became storytellers again. And if you look closely at this quarter, you can almost hear the steam engines, the cheers of the workers, and the hammer striking the final spike, uniting a nation. This coin teaches us that progress is built on perseverance, cooperation, and vision, and that even the smallest object can carry the weight of a nation's journey. So the next time you see a 2007 $quarter, pause before you spend it. Turn it over, study the design, and remember that you are holding a piece of American history, shaped by sacrifice, ambition, and unity. And that is why the 2007 Utah $quarter coin remains one of the most meaningful and collectible coins of the entire state quarter series. $quarter, where a single pocket change coin opens the door to centuries of American ambition, courage, and identity. And today, we are holding the 2002 Indiana quarter, a coin that looks simple at first glance, yet carries the heartbeat of a state built on movement, speed, industry, and quiet strength. And as you listen, imagine this coin spinning through time from frontier trails to roaring engines, from farmland to factory, floors from horse-drawn wagons to the thunder of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And this is not just a quarter. It is Indiana captured in metal, a story of people who pushed west, who built communities, who raced toward the future, and who left a legacy that still moves America forward. And as this coin rests in your hand, you are touching a chapter of history that connects presidents, pioneers, farmers, inventors, soldiers, and dreamers, because the Indiana quarter was released in 2002 as part of the historic 50 State Quarters program, a program that turned everyday change into a traveling museum, and Indiana proudly became the 19th state honored entering the Union in 1816 and choosing a design that spoke clearly about motion, progress, and tradition. And at the center of the reverse stands a powerful race car surrounded by 19 stars, symbolizing Indiana as the 19th state and representing speed innovation, and the world-famous Indianapolis 500, known as the greatest spectacle in racing, a race that began in 1911 and transformed Indiana into a global symbol of engineering, excellence, precision, and daring. And this choice was no accident, because Indiana has long been a crossroads of America, a place where roads, railways, rivers, and ideas meet, earning its nickname, the Crossroads of America. And that race car is not just about sports. It is about industry, technology, teamwork, and the relentless drive to go faster and further. And when you turn the coin to the obverse, you see George Washington, steady and timeless, reminding us that while America races forward, it is anchored by founding principles and minted in both Philadelphia and Denver. The 2002 Indiana quarter entered circulation by the hundreds of millions, slipping into cash registers, wallets, and piggy banks, carrying with it the identity of a state shaped by Native American heritage, early French explorers, and waves of settlers who turned wilderness into farmland and towns, and later into manufacturing powerhouses, producing steel automobiles and machinery that fueled American growth through the 19th and 20th centuries. And as we move deeper into this story, we see Indiana not just as a place, but as a symbol of balance between tradition and progress, between rural life and industrial might, between quiet Midwestern values and world-class innovation. And this quarter reflects that balance perfectly. Because while the race car screams speed, the stars grounded in history and statehood, and every detail matters, from the clean lines of the design to the year mark that places it firmly at the beginning of the 21st century, a time when America was redefining itself once again. And for collectors, this coin offers layers of interest, from high-grade mint, state examples to errors and varieties that spark treasure hunts in everyday change. And while most examples are common, the true value lies in the story, the connection, and the way this small coin turns ordinary moments into historical reflection. And over the course of this journey, we can explore Indiana, early settlements, the role of the state in westward expansion, its contribution to wars, industry, music, sports, and culture, and how a single quarter managed to capture the soul of a place known for hard work, humility, and speed. And by the time this story ends, you will never look at the 2002 Indiana quarter the same way again, because this is more than currency. This is America moving forward, 1 mile, one race, one dream at a time. And here on Coins Quarter Dollar, we turn pocket change into powerful stories that deserve to be told and remembered. As we continue this journey, let the 2002 Indiana quarter guide us deeper into the layers of a state whose influence reaches far beyond its borders. Because Indiana history did not begin with statehood. It began long before with Native American nations, such as the Miami Shawnee and Potawatomi, who understood the land, the rivers, and the seasons, and whose trails later became roads and highways, shaping how America would move west. And when European explorers arrived, French traders followed the waterways, establishing posts that turned Indiana into a meeting place of cultures, commerce, and conflict. And as the young United States expanded, Indiana stood at the edge of the frontier, a proving ground where determination meant survival and cooperation meant growth. And when Indiana became the 19th state in 1816, it entered the Union at a moment when America itself was still finding its identity. And that is why the 19 stars on the quarter matter so much, because they are not decoration. They are a declaration of belonging, of arrival, of permanence. And as settlers poured in, they transformed forests into farms, creating an agricultural backbone that would sustain generations. And even today, Indiana corn and soybeans feed the nation, reflecting a legacy of working the land with patience and pride. And yet Indiana was never only about farming, because the same geography that supported crops also supported industry, canals, and later railroads cut through the state, turning it into a transportation hub, earning the title Crossroads of America. And this movement of goods, people, and ideas laid the foundation for innovation and manufacturing. And by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Indiana factories were producing steel glass automobiles and machinery that powered American cities and wars. And this industrial strength naturally led to experimentation with engines, speed, and mechanics. And that is where the Indianapolis Motor Speedway enters the story, not just as a racetrack, but as a laboratory of progress. And when the first Indianapolis 500 was run in 1911, it was more than a race. It was a statement that Indiana was ready to lead in technology endurance and precision. And over the decades, the Speedway became sacred ground, where legends were born, records were shattered, and the limits of human and mechanical performance were tested. And the race car on the 2002 Indiana Quarter captures that spirit perfectly, because it represents not just one event, but a century of innovation, courage, and relentless improvement. And as the 20th century unfolded, Indiana citizens served in every major conflict, contributing soldiers, supplies, and support, reinforcing the state's reputation for quiet strength and reliability. And at home, communities grew around schools, churches, factories, and small businesses, creating a culture rooted in responsibility, family, and resilience. And when America faced economic shifts, Indiana adapted, evolving from heavy industry to advanced manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, and education. And this adaptability is another reason the quarter design resonates, because speed is not only about racing, it is about adapting quickly, moving forward, refusing to stand still. And as collectors examine the 2002 Indiana quarter, they often search for pristine examples with sharp strikes and full luster, or for mint errors that turn ordinary coins into rare finds. But beyond the hunt, there is a deeper satisfaction in understanding what the coin represents, because every scratch, every worn edge tells. $quarter and get ready. Because today you are about to travel through time, steel and stone, as we uncover the powerful story behind the 2015 Blue Ridge Parkway. Quarter, a coin that looks small in your hand, but carries nearly a century of American vision, ambition, struggle, beauty, and national pride. This is not just spare change. This is a moving monument struck in metal, a coin that connects the Great Depression, the rise of the automobile, the birth of America's love affair with road trips, and the preservation of natural beauty into one unforgettable design. Now imagine the United States in the early 20th century, a nation changing fast, factories, roaring cities, growing people searching for freedom beyond crowded streets. And that desire gave birth to roads, not just roads, but scenic highways, meant to heal the spirit. And the Blue Ridge Parkway was the crown jewel of that dream, stretching across the ancient Blue Ridge Mountains, linking Shenandoah National Park in Virginia to Great Smoky Mountains National Park in North Carolina. This road was never meant to be rushed. It was designed to slow you down, to make you breathe, to make you look. And when Congress approved the parkway in the 1930s, America was suffering through the Great Depression. Jobs were. Scarce hope was thin. And yet this road became a lifeline, employing thousands of workers, craftsmen, engineers, and dreamers, carving a ribbon of pavement through some of the oldest mountains on Earth. Stone by stone, mile by mile, with hand tools, sweat, and determination. And that human effort is quietly honored in the 2015 quarter through the graceful winding road, disappearing into layered mountain ridges, a symbol of both physical journey and national recovery. The design selected for this coin captures the soul of the parkway, the gentle curve of the road, the rolling hills fading into mist, the sense that the journey matters more than the destination. And when the United States Mint released this quarter as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, it was more than a tribute to a park. It was a reminder of why America preserves places like this for everyone. Not just the wealthy, not just the powerful, but every traveler, every family, every dreamer who ever rolled down their car window and felt the mountain air. The Blue Ridge Parkway itself runs for 469 miles, passing through forests, meadows, tunnels, and overlooks with no billboards, no stoplights, and no commercial traffic, a deliberate choice that makes it unique in the world. And that philosophy is echoed in the coin design. Clean, peaceful, balanced, a sharp contrast to the noisy clutter of modern life. The coin invites you to pause just like the road does now. Let us talk about the year 2015, a time when this quarter entered circulation, quietly slipping into pockets, cash registers, and collections across the nation. Many people spent it without a second glance, yet collectors knew that these quarters represented more than face value struck in Philadelphia and Denver in large numbers, yet still cherished for their artistic quality and connection to American heritage, while proof versions from San Francisco offered mirror-like finishes that elevated the design into miniature art. And for collectors, the 2015 Blue Ridge Parkway quarter became a gateway coin, one that pulled new people into the hobby because it told a story they could feel even if they had never visited the mountains. And when you hold this coin, you are holding a map, a memory, and a mission, because the parkway was built not just to connect parks, but to preserve landscapes, protect wildlife, and honor mountain communities whose culture, music, and traditions shaped the region. Generations of families lived along these ridges, farming, logging, and surviving long before the road arrived, and their legacy still echoes through bluegrass music, folk art, and local crafts celebrated in visitor centers along the route. And though the coin shows only mountains and road, it symbolically carries all those voices, all those footsteps, and all those songs. Now consider the deeper symbolism. The road on the coin does not show cars. It does not show people, yet you feel their presence, because the parkway was designed as a shared experience, a democratic space, where rich and poor stand side by side at overlooks watching the same sunrise. And that idea is powerful, especially today, and that is why this quarter matters. It represents unity through shared heritage and shared land. And as part of the America the Beautiful series, the Blue Ridge Parkway quarter stands out because it is not just a destination, it is a journey itself. Unlike national parks with fixed boundaries, this parkway flows across states, cultures, and ecosystems, making it a living corridor of history and nature. And the coin captures that motion perfectly, and for investors and collectors alike. This quarter holds long-term appeal, not because it is rare today, but because stories age better than numbers as years pass and fewer high-grade examples survive. The emotional value of this coin grows especially for those who have driven the parkway or dream of doing so. And this is why the 2015 Blue Ridge Parkway quarter deserves attention, respect, and a place in your collection or your content. Because every coin tells a story, but only a few tell a story, this deep, this wide, and this human. And as this video continues, we will explore the hidden design, details, the minting process, the historical debates behind the parkway construction, the role of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the New Deal programs that made it possible, and how this single quarter connects to one of the greatest scenic achievements in the world. So stay with me, because what looks like pocket change is actually a passport into the heart of America, and this is the story of the 2015 Blue Ridge Parkway quarter, a journey struck in silver-colored metal that never truly ends.